Attention sellers, should I offer a buyer agent commission? That is the question that we're getting from a lot of sellers. And there's a lot of misinformation out there with the media. And we wanted to clear that up today. My name is Willie Miranda with Miranda Real Estate Group. And I'm here with Christine Serafini, one of our top agents here at Miranda Real Estate Group. And Christine, you put together a great packet. I mean, Christine's always been really great with educating the public, educating your clients on what's going on out there. And there's been a lot of questions from our sellers as to, do I pay a commission? I'm reading on, you see the news channel 10 the other night had a thing on it, or last week they had a thing on it where, sellers going to save all this money now on their commissions, and it's just not the case. And I wanted to really just clear it up. And you shared with me what you were sending out to your sellers and to a lot of your clients. And I thought this was awesome. And the topic is, should I offer a buyer agent's commission? And is it really necessary to offer a commission? Mm-hmm. So I wanted to first just ask you, where did you come up with some of this information here, and why is it so important for sellers to know this?
I think it was important for me to be able to have something tangible that I could share with homeowners after having the conversation of should they pay a commission, or really coming to me and say, well, I don't have to pay that anymore. Right. And what we need to do as realtors is educate them on saying, well, there's a pro to that, or there's pros, and there's a negative feature to that as well. Right. I think really important, the pro is you want to maximize your marketing with having the most amount of buyers in your home and procuring the best offer that we can procure for you. Mm-hmm.
And it's so true. I mean, I would hear that too. And actually, you and I had conversations where sellers say, hey, I heard on the news, I don't have to pay commissions anymore. Mm-hmm. And, they don't understand that it puts them in such a uncompetitive situation, financial situation, where they're actually luring buyers away from them, right? Instead of attracting buyers, to your point. Mm-hmm. And I know on here you talked about some of the benefits, and I thought maybe we'd jump right into these. There was like 8 great points that you had here on your report. And it said on here the benefits of offering a buyer agent commission. And you had, like I said, about 8 of them. And the first one on here was about making a broader buyer pool. Mm-hmm. Maybe talk a little bit about that and how that increases the buyer pool.
Mm-hmm. One thing that has changed, I will say, with the National Association of Realtors, in regards to commission, it can no longer be offered on the multiple listing service. Correct. That's really the big change that happened for sellers. It doesn't mean you shouldn't pay it anymore. Right. So the buyers agents that are out there working for buyers, they can no longer see that offer of cooperation. So they don't know. So many times now they'll call the agent and ask if there is a cooperation being offered from the seller. Right. And my reaction to that is anything is negotiable, because at the end of the day, my job as a listing agent for a seller is to have the most amount of people, least amount of time, and net the seller the most amount of money. Commission, yes. Is it a fee that the sellers have to pay? Yes, it is, but it's also a service we're providing to help them sell one of the biggest assets. So in doing so, we want the biggest buyer pool that we can get. And for many times, buyers can't afford that additional cooperation that maybe a seller won't offer. Right. So when a buyer's agent does find out and communicates to that, yes, it's negotiable, that definitely you get more buyers in the door.
The key thing you just said there is net, right? Mm-hmm. A seller really only cares about what the net is. Doesn't matter what commission was paid out. Mm-hmm. And as far as the money coming to the table, the buyer is bringing the money to the table. Right. So as long as the net works out for the seller, who cares what they're paying in a commission, correct?
Exactly.
All right, the next point on here you had was attracting serious buyers, right? Because agents usually work with buyers, and now with all the new rules, maybe explain about that. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so the new rule on the buyer agent side is any buyer that's going to show a property, any buyer's agent that's going to show a property, they need to have a written buyer's agreement with that buyer. And what comes with that is a lot of value, and that buyer will understand the importance of that written agreement when they start talking to a realtor about purchasing a home. But when that buyer's agent is working with a buyer, making an appointment to see your home, they've done their diligence of a pre-approval. That they've talked to a realtor about what their wants and needs are. That they're just not wasting their time looking at this house. This is a house that fits their needs. So that seller, you're going to want that buyer in your home.
And I heard, I was talking to an agent yesterday out of Dallas, and I thought it was great what he said. He had the same question come up from a buyer who didn't want to sign it. Mm-hmm. And he's like, why do I have to sign this? He goes, listen, I'd have to have my mother sign this if I wanted to show her house. Like, it's just something that's just mandatory for us to have signed as agents. And I really think it sets the tire kickers and the people who are just kind of wasting time and just want to go in and see a home. I think that will minimize that as well and bring a lot more serious buyers, like I said here.
Yeah, and I think serious buyers are also being led by serious buyer's agents. Buyer's agents should be showing the value to the buyer, not just signing a form because they want to see a house.
Right.
The expertise should be showing, the negotiation skills, and a seller is going to want to know that a buyer is working with an expert buyer's agent.
And the third point on here, you mentioned enhanced marketing reach. And I know there's a lot of channels out there, a lot of media to get out there. Let's talk about that.
Right, and as a listing agent for a home seller, it's very important. Not only are we going to put your home into the multiple listing service, we're going to be using social media channels, we're going to be email campaigns, we're going to be putting it on our website. In doing that, we can still market what that cooperating brokerage or that commission is on those social networks in an email. We cannot put it in MLS.
Right.
That's the guideline. But what we're going to do is broaden our search for buyers, not only with buyers agents, but buyers could see our social media posts. They could be getting emails from us, and we can communicate as a listing agent that the seller is offering commission. That does help the buyer eliminate that fee of a closing cost that ultimately, could affect their purchasing power.
Sure, absolutely. And it's going to affect their purchasing power and also the amount of money that they need to put down on a deal and buying a home. The fourth one on here was increased showings. Now, I know that's something that is very important because that's why most sellers would hire an agent, is to get those showings and get as many buyers in the door. So let's talk about that.
Again, we want the demand. We want the most amount of buyers that we can procure to create that sense of urgency, to create this great product that's on the market. First 10 days is the most sensitive time. I would even say, maybe the first 5 days, most sensitive time for a homeowner to have their home on the market. So you want to give the best impression. One thing that you might not want to do is make a decision and say, well, I don't want to offer it now, but if I don't get the showings, maybe we'll offer it in 10 days. Well, that's really hard for us to market appropriately and right out of the gate in multiple listing. But at the end of the day, when a buyer or buyer agent calls me and I'm representing a seller, I'm never going to say no. What I'm going to say, anything is negotiable.
Right, bring us
I
an
never
offer.
want to close the door.
Right. And back to our point, it's all about the net. So as long as the seller is going to net the same, who cares what they're paying in that commission?
Exactly.
All right, then you had on here reduce buyer barriers by offering a commission. You put on here that makes your home accessible to buyers who might not afford to cover their agent's fee themselves, ensuring that your property is ruled out due to affordability issues. And I know we touched on that a little bit, but reduce buyer barriers, I think that's key right there.
That is. We don't want a buyer being affected of their decision to make an offer because they can't afford to pay their buyer agency or the cooperating broker, right? Again, a lot of these points talk about the same thing. It's really important to let buyers know that you are willing to negotiate commission and the seller still wants to net the most amount of money and the buyer can stay in that place of affordability with that house. Right. I think that those are just the three things: netting the seller the most amount of money, creating the affordability for the buyer, and the best demand for the home.
All right, and then strengthening the negotiation side of things. This is where you're going to increase the interest of the multiple offers that give you much better leverage to negotiate a higher sales price and better terms. So how is that a factor for sellers and how that benefit to them?
Well, multiple offers are probably the best thing that we can tell our sellers, right? We can bring in a bunch of offers and they get to choose which offer is the best for them. And sometimes that's not only about money. That's about contingencies or time frame of closing. There's a lot of things there that can benefit the seller. Now, for a buyer, when they're in a multiple offer and you're not offering that cooperating broker commission, now that's a fee with the buyer. That's going to reduce the amount of money that they're able to offer you because they need to offset it by that fee. Right.
Okay. All right. And then you had on here minimize deal failures. I know it's always better to work with another agent and a good agent on the other side. I know that's something that we always strive to do. But how does that affect the seller by having these deal failures take place? by not offering a compensation?
Well, that's again, we want a buyer's agent involved in the transaction. We want the buyer's agent to be able to negotiate for the buyer. If a buyer's just doing it, coming in and trying to do it maybe with their attorney or just on their own, that negotiation isn't as strong. That buyer's not being guided.
Right.
And it's really important that a seller and a seller's agent works with a buyer's agent, and they do it cohesively. They know what the contingencies are for the buyer. I would know the contingencies for the seller if I'm the selling agent. And it just professionally, expert-wise, and getting to the closing table, which is the most important thing with the least amount of hassle, we're all working together.
Okay. And then the last point on here, number 8, was increasing the sales value. And that's something that, again, we want as many buyers coming in the door. We want as many opportunities. Like you said, multiple offers would be great. Mm-hmm. But talk about how that actually offering compensation would increase the sales volume.
It absolutely does. It'll bring the best competition. You'll get everyone. You'll get not only buyers who are interested, but buyers' agents that want to negotiate and compete for their buyer to get that home. So you just don't want to close the door. I feel, bottom line, not offering a commission, you'd be closing doors to opportunity to net the most amount of money and get the best offer for your house. Again, it's not about just net. You could have a seller that's willing to wait, a buyer that's willing to wait for you to find a home of choice if you're a homeowner or a home seller and you don't know where you're going yet. That's almost as important sometimes as what the seller is netting. So again, you don't want to close doors on any opportunities of negotiation.
Great points on here. And I think, we are seeing where you do have some buyers saying, well, I'm just going to go ahead and, go to the listing agent instead of working with a buyer agent. Because sometimes, like you said, a buyer agent feels that, geez, I have to pay this commission now. I'm just going to go do this on my own, right? I can just go on Zillow or I can go to Realtor.com and just do that. Mm-hmm. What do you say to a seller about people that come in unrepresented? I mean, how do you handle that?
I handle that a lot, and that's the perception. If a buyer calls the listing agent, they're not going to have to pay the commission, and that's not the case. Right. When I tell a seller a buyer has called me, the seller is fiduciarily is my client.
Right.
My responsibility is to them. My loyalty is to them. I can show a buyer a house who's not represented. I can show the buyer the house, and they become my customer. I can't advise them on what the seller will take or what they're willing to negotiate. I don't share any of that. That's my loyalty and my confidentiality to my seller. But if Mr. Buyer comes in and says, I just want you to put an offer in, and I most certainly will write an offer, I'll present it to my seller. If it's the terms and what my seller's looking for, of course, we're going to do that. And then we'll execute the contract together. But again, the seller remains to be my client. The buyer would be my customer.
Well, great information, Christine, and it's a great report that you put together here. And I know, just to talk a little about your background as well, I mean, you've been in this business now, over 20 years?
21 years.
21 years. And I know we started that journey together. You were one of my buyers, actually, to begin with.
Yep.
But you've done a great job consistently in the top 100, now into the top 50, right, of all agents across the Capital District. And also, you've been doing this for a long time now, and have a lot of great accolades to go with that. I want to say you've done just under, I don't know, it was 700 and something homes. So what was the number of home sales?
I'm a little over 750 now.
Yeah, 750 now. I can't keep track. Every month it changes. But you're doing a great job. But if someone wanted this report, how would they get a hold of this report?
Yep, absolutely. They would go to my website, SerafiniSellsHomes.com. It's right there on the main page. They can click it. They can call me, 518-514-8830. I'm always willing and able to have a conversation with anybody that's considering buying or selling. I think it's very important that you reach out to experts. I'm not patting myself on the shoulder, but I take a lot of time to understand what the client needs and what the client wants, and this is something I really think is of benefit.
Well, great information. So if you're looking to sell your home, call Christine and start packing.